it is scary. Like, don't let anyone tell you that it isn't. It is. It's scary. You're facing off against part of you that you have rejected and abandoned, and it will feel scary, and parts of it will be scary, and you are strong enough.
This is Awakened Love, the podcast, and I'm your host, Angel. This is a space where we get real about sex, love, and awakening. So strap in, let's go deep. What's up, beautiful awakened beings? Welcome to another episode of Awakened Love. And today we have Miss Rachel Pringle. Rachel is a tantra mysticism teacher. She's an artist, a poet. She is one of the most devoted and sincere spiritual seekers I have ever encountered on this path. She is my best friend, an amazing collaborator. She's been featured in the likes of Elle and Mind Valley and Vogue. And I'm so delighted to have her here with us today. What's up, beautiful awakened beings? As you can hear, we're already laughing, feeling turned on, excited and connected. Welcome to the show, babe. Thanks for coming.
Oh, me. Thanks for reaching out.
I mean, thanks to everyone listening, but yeah, especially thanks to you.
Oh, I am just honored, as always, to be in any sort of conversation with you, my soul sisters. So grateful.
So remind me, my love, what was your word for 2022?
My words were luxurious creation.
Ooh.
Yeah.
How has that shown up for you?
It's, it's such a great question, and it's so beautiful. And I love you because it's so been present on my mind, because I think that we make this statement, right? Like the New Year's coming and we're like, this is my word, or these are my words. And in the first few months, at least for me, it doesn't have a tendency to show up, because we're kind of in the preparation or the gestation or the creation or action mode of it. And it's always at the end of the year that I look back and I'm like, God damn, I really was in that. And really, as we're in the tail end of the year, feeling it so deeply and so profoundly in a really beautiful way. I returned to poetry in a really deep way this year. And really like the poetry within me. And I also surrendered to help outside of myself, which helped with the luxury part of creation, right? Not starving myself or demanding or sort of like straining to create, but using outside sources, people, things to help me in that process. And it's been pretty incredible. And I've seen like my business grow and my brand grow in a way that I don't think I could have even imagined, because I surrendered so deeply to it. Yeah.
You bring up a really important point, which is receiving help. And I'll be working on this, honey. Why do you
we
think
all be working on this?
Why do you think, at least for you in your journey, like what's been hard about that?
I think there's two things, and I think you'll resonate very deeply as we talk about this all the time. It's like, I am quick. I am fast. I go at a speed that is just, I don't think the norm. And so, in full, complete honesty, I can get really frustrated with people who can't keep up with me, and so it's like, when I have in the past collaborated, I have felt like I have pulled the weight. And I know that you and I have had this conversation before, which is why collaborating together feels so great, because we're both like, let's go. and I think that there's exactly to what I just expressed, is that there's a level of surrender into something greater than like my human experience, right? Because like the Rachel that is a fast moving train, to step off that train to like be in collaboration with the divine, and to know that the divine doesn't have to look like just this spiritual connection inside of us, but can look like a person outside of us, and really trusting in that, and taking for me personally, the micromanaging out of it, because that is in a way like a projection, and you're setting the people up opposite you to fail because you're already trying to fix them versus giving them a chance to pick up their own speed and to meet you in the places and ways that you can't necessarily meet yourself, right? Johan and I always talk about like collaborating with people that are in their zone of genius so we can collectively make a living organism of transformation. Like, I'm great at a lot of things, and editing my videos and making those things, like, I'm not the best. I can do it. It's time consuming, and finding someone who's helped collaborate in all of those ways, it's been literally one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. And that has actually been a beautiful sort of like recipe for me to let go in all other areas of my life. And really, like, again, seeing that the divine does not have to look like just prayer or this internal thing, but God gets to show up, or the goddess gets to show up in people around you. And can I just like let someone else do what I can't do so that we can do it better together?
Yes. Yeah. It makes me think of that, like the idea that together we can almost create like a hybrid intelligence, like in sacred union, we have our intelligence, but when we're in cohesion instead of conflict, which also happens, when we're in that cohesion state, it's like we have this hybrid intelligence, because my mind alone and all of my experiences and all of my wisdom combined with, or even like you and I, not even just Patrick and I in Sacred Union, you and I, let's say when we're teaching in the teaching space together, it's like all of a sudden it's exponential, because now it's not just my like channel, it's your channel. And then we create this field of collective, how many plug-in points to the divine can we add in? But then with that comes like a layer of complexity.
Yes.
And how do we navigate that? Like how do you, or how has that shown up for you? Do you find that there's like increased capacity, but maybe increased complexity, or is that not something you experience?
Absolutely. And I think that the one thing that comes to mind is just being curious and staying in that curiosity and figuring out which collaborations are working, and being able to pull out or complete collaborations that aren't working, right? Without needing to make either person wrong, or, that's a moving process. And, I'm thinking specifically with, our girl Queena, who like does all my branding, and, she's made everything that I visualize in my mind or experience and feeling emotions in my body come to life. And there have been moments where I've watched like, ooh, well, I would have done it like this, but then seeing that the way that she did it was actually better. And same with Johan, and same with you, being in the container of Root Revolution, they're like, you can, and I know both of us can do this, of like, we're in ritual space with another person leading, and we're like, oh, well, I would have maybe done this, and I would have maybe done that. Instead of really surrendering and in the process of getting to receive from you. I mean, I quantum leaped like so drastically, because I got to put down that part of me that is always trying to better what is versus receiving what is.
Oof. Whoa. I just felt that in my throat. I just choked on that like a big old cock. Wow.
Amen.
That was deep in my throat. Wow. Receiving what is instead of trying to better what is. Oh my God. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Oof. And I think an element of that is that discernment, exactly what you said, of like choosing who you collaborate with so that you can be in trust, so that you can let go and surrender. And I mean, I think of kind of a silly example of yoga teachers. I'll often be in a class if I don't fully trust the leadership, and I'll be like, oh, why'd they sequence that like that? And, in my head about it, versus when I step in. And it's interesting because before I've even taken the class, I usually feel if my body's going to be able to relax and surrender with someone. And when I was in Australia recently, I asked myself, because it happened so instantly, the woman walked in the room, and my whole body wanted to let go to her, wanted to just totally submit. And it's a nice feeling when you're a bratty little sub, like you and I both can be, to just go, oh yes, take me, tell me what to do with my body in space for an hour, please, please. Like I want to be led, I want to let go. And I was like, wow, what is it about this woman that makes me surrender so instantly? And I was like, it's her authority, but it's also her humility, which those two things almost seem like they don't go together. But actually, when you feel them in a human being, at least for me, I'm like, oh, that's what I look for in someone I want to lead me, is like a level of authority. They have a trust in their own mastery of what they're sharing, but they also have a humility in all the things that they don't know. And I think that was a powerful realization. I'm curious for you, what do you look for when it comes to being led?
Oh my God, it's so good. I'm just like slurping that up. I'm like, yeah, I think the thing that comes to me that actually I discussed with Andrew Horn when I was in Austin.
He's coming on the podcast in January.
Bless him. We were talking about who your closest friends are. We got into that conversation, which is the same sort of thing, right? Who do you trust? And the two things that we spoke about are depth and levity, right?
Ooh.
So, which is kind of the same. Like I love, and this brings me into, it's so funny what's coming through. This brings me into like, talking about my like core erotic themes, which are desire and power. Like in order for me to surrender or to submit, I need to feel that your power matches mine or is greater than mine, and that there is a desire to go deeper. Right. And when that is present, I mean, hello, you as a teacher, like, like, then I'm like, let's go, baby. Yeah. And it doesn't matter about age or any of those things that I think, it's like, people, how many certifications you have, it's your willingness to ride that wave that goes right into the depth and hold that. That's what I think authority is. It's a level of confidence of your willingness to touch those parts of you, so that when I touch those parts of me, I know that you can handle it.
Yeah. Yes. And that's something I'm so fucking grateful for you, my love, because I know, and we've talked about this a lot, like in my life, my core wound has been like, I can't depend on anyone and no one can meet me in the space of like, my emotions will be too big or too much, or, whatever it is, my darkness. And you, again and again, you just meet me there, like so undisturbed. Like, yeah, totally. And tell me more about that. I'm like, whoa, who is this alien? It's such a profound gift. And I think we can only meet people as deeply as we've met ourselves. And we hear that and we're like, what does that really mean? But it's what you're describing, like that willingness to touch the dark, ugly, weird, creepy, mysterious stuff inside of us. And it is kind of like a mystery when we go deep into ritual space, because you're stepping towards you don't know what. And when you're holding that space for even as an individual in a coaching session or a group in a collective field, you're kind of like setting the intention in the container and you are like holding the space. But as you said, you're riding the space because we don't know what's going to emerge in the collective field. And so, it's that willingness to face whatever arises with a smile, almost with like a welcome. Yes. And I felt that in you so much.
I think that that brings me to the other awareness of like, as you said, as a yoga teacher, because both you and I started as yoga teachers, this awareness as a teacher, like to be able to read a room, right? You can come in with a sequence and you can come in with a ritual. And that's a huge, massive part of it, is energetically being attuned to what they need versus what you want to give. Right. And that's great. Yeah. That's the highest service, right? It's like, I'm here to serve the people who have come, and I am serving myself through that service. And can I have the willingness? And that's the authority that we can feel, is that trust in themselves to be able to ride that wave. And I think obviously both you and I we're in this practice. I now get off on that journey.
Same.
I'm
Yeah.
let's go, honey. Let's see what's going to happen here. It's so
Yes.
exciting, which means I am not really in control. The divine is in control, and we're just continuously setting up the stage for her. And when you
Mm.
experience a practitioner or a teacher or a mentor or whatever that holds that energy, it's exhilarating because you as a student automatically know I'm going to get something out of this really deep.
Yes. Yeah, it's like willing to let life surprise you. It's
Yes.
like just willing to let, exactly as you said. And I think in that facilitator space is such a beautiful, dare I say, almost easeful way to do what you said, which is, can I receive what's here? And instead of trying to like make it better, it's that like high level of energetic attunement to what's happening and being willing to just
Yeah.
moment to moment meet the room. And yeah, my desire, I guess, is like to take that more into my life, not
Yes.
just when the stakes are so high in the facilitator seat. It can, there's a well, you know, you've done your hours. We've both done our 10,000 hours. So you get in that seat and you're like, woo, let's do it. And then you get
Yeah.
into other areas of life where you haven't done your 10,000 hours and you're like, what the fuck is happening? You and I
Yes.
have been in a conversation recently around like, and you can, I'm sure people can probably feel it in the way that we're talking and how we're describing things, but this conversation around power and
Mm-hmm.
domination and submission, and like we were joking together how life like is a divine dominatrix, and she's like, the
Yes.
divine is the dom, exactly as you were describing. When you're in the facilitator seat, you're actually the sub, you're letting go and you're being dommed by this, by
Yes.
spirit. You're being like led in, and through that you're leading
Mm. Mm.
the, you know, I would say women, but participants deeper.
Yes.
Talk to me about like domination and submission and your experience of that and power play. And you said that part of your erotic kind of depths is desire and power. So I would love
Yes.
to just hear news on that.
Oh, so it's so delicious. And I remember that moment when you were like getting domed by the divine. I was like, yes. And I think it's, it's been a really interesting subject, right? To understand those core erotic themes in me and to understand like, and you and I have spoke about this so much, to get away from right gender and masculine, feminine. And I understand what people are saying with masculine, feminine, but going into something that Johan and I have been working with is like presence and creation, right? The energies of those, and feeling like it doesn't matter what it is and what gender someone is, but when I feel someone who meets me in that power, it allows me to surrender into like a void or a space within myself that is seemingly chaotic, but with that added support of another person, it gets to be so like erotically transcendent because
Yes.
perhaps on our own it can feel really scary, even though practiced over time we get good at it. But when there's an extra person, there's more oomph to be able to touch this and sort of really let go. And obviously in both of our
Yes.
partnerships we get to feel that, and we get to feel it in our friendships. And I'm really fascinated with playing both roles and recognizing, I think that the word to submit in like our 3D reality is a, sort of really like a not good word, but in that sacred unit, to submit to the divine means to let go of what we think should happen and to give way to what the moment wants to happen, which is likely something greater than we would have allowed ourselves as a human to touch, right? Like an orgasmic state is beyond like what we can imagine with our normal senses. It is like a transcendental state of complete
Yes.
surrender. And I
And we
just
don't
want
create
to
an orgasm, we allow it,
boom.
you know? Yeah. So it's
Exactly.
like, yes. Yes. It's like, how much energy can you hold in your body while maintaining a state of let go and relaxation
Yeah.
versus
Yeah.
shutting it off or
Yeah.
closing it down, you
Yeah.
know? You were
And
going to
to
say
be in
something
that
else.
ebb and flow, well, I think that's what that is like, I'm even hearing it when I say it, because I think what we're realizing too through our discovery is like we want to, again, put ourselves into categories. I'm a sub or I'm a dom, but really how can we fluctuate and experience all of them at once, moving, as we talk about all the time, moment to moment into what the moment wants versus, again, what we think it's supposed to be. And in that, like, I'm surrendering into this orgasmic state, and then I'm coming back to, you know, to now creating it, and now I'm allowing it, and now I'm creating in my partner, I'm creating in my friend. And it's just like endlessly fascinating to me. And, you know, it's like I think we're just scratching the surface. And I think that
yes.
I'm very
Get ready,
excited.
y'all. Get ready, honey. Oh my God. Yeah. It's so fascinating. What's been revealed to me through this has been such a, and you've been so on this journey with me, like an acceptance of a part of me that I actually had deemed wrong.
Yeah.
Subconsciously, I was like, well, the part of me, I'm kind of naturally can be very dominant as a person. I'm a bit of a dom mummy. And as I kind of opened spiritually and learned how to de-armor my heart, and I'm still very much in that process, but softened so much and learned so much about surrender, and particularly in my partnership now, like Patrick has, like, I'm sure you have seen, Rachel, the shift in me from before being with him to like now, how much softer I am and like able to access my heart and open. And it's been so beautiful. But there's been this like reclamation in the last few months as we've been kind of exploring these topics more deeply, of the dom in me, that and actually that I can trust that part of me, and that, oh wow, this is like a skill, a muscle that I've flexed a lot. So it's really easy for me to go there. And what I'm realizing is there's so many unconscious power dynamics that we play out, and particularly with ourselves, but in our partnerships. And Patrick and I had a heart ceremony on Friday night, and it was so beautiful. And like one of the things we realized is like, I was like, can we take any of the unconscious power dynamics we have and make them conscious and eroticize them? So for example, like a pattern that we play out, a tug of war that has been unconscious, is he's slowing me down and I'm trying to speed him up.
Oh my God.
Like in life, like I'll be like, you were talking about being really fast. It's like, me too. And so he'll be like, you know, like even just getting ready or going somewhere, he fucking hates when I rush him. And I'm trying not to rush him because I know he doesn't like it, but low key, I'm like, hurry the fuck up, like trying to rush him. Yeah. And like, even in life, in other things, I'm like, I really want to do this or make this happen. And he's like, well, slow the fuck down. And it's when it's an unconscious power struggle, it's really uncomfortable. But what I realized on Friday night, I'm like, can we make that conscious and eroticize it? So can we make it that you consciously tug my collar and say, slow down. No, not yet. Not yet. Wait. Okay, go. Like edge me in life through that. And I was like, whoa, how many like unconscious power dynamics do we have that are like not hot because it's unconscious, it's just a struggle. And like this world of BDSM and domination and submission is like, whoa, it's a space where we get to just make all of that, like to bring it to the light, highlight it, embrace it, and actually get turned on by it, instead of all of us running around with the unconscious power dynamics that we engage in that are not hot.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's 100 completely. I'm like, because, and I actually feel like that's what eroticism is really here for us to do, is to heal those patterns through the space of sensuality and sexuality with a person that we deeply trust, right? To understand like, and Johan and I, we just did it this morning because I was, again, same thing. Like, I think I've been very, very, very soft, and I can be very dominant in my like business way, and my like intensity is very at the forefront. And his presence of him doming me has actually helped my inner intensity and dom come forward. And, you know, he said it today as he jokingly as I'm like hormonally constipated right now and I'm in my intensity. And he's like, I wanted you feisty. I'm like, yeah, you created this. And he's like, yeah, thank God. Right. Versus, and the reason why I share that is because I had such a deep, shame around that part of me, that like this feisty, fiery, like dominant aspect is masculine, is not sexy, is not, you know, surrendered or soft or feminine, or all of these things that, you know, we hear in the industry. And that's actually not the case. Like me, when I'm in that fiery, feisty expression, is such a turn on to him. And then it pushes us
Yes.
right into that ebb and flow of like mixing and moving, and like him, yeah, slow down. And I'm like, speed up. And it's, it's really in a way just bringing consciousness to our shadow and being, and having the
Yes.
willingness to see it.
Yes. And the safety to play it all the way out. Like the darkest parts of us,
Yeah.
like what happens if we just play it out in a safe way? Like, you know, I think there's something really beautiful about BDSM in that way, that you can take the things that feel wrong or dirty or taboo. And that's the whole reason why they feel so fucking charged and kinky, and play it
Yeah.
out. Like, okay, let me check that out in a safe, conscious, consensual way. Like,
Yeah.
what happens if I actually go there and allow that? And that is shadow work at the like the deepest level, to fully and sweetly embrace all parts of self, and to be witnessed in that is so fucking vulnerable. Like if that part of you that you've deemed like difficult to be with, that feisty part, and then letting him fan the flames and letting him make love to that part of you, like, ooh,
Yeah.
baby.
Yeah. 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 It's been
Mm.
incredibly healing on so many different levels, because I remember, we actually spoke about it last night. I remember when I was younger dating and like not being able to like find a guy. And my mom was like, maybe you could be like a little bit less intense. And I was like, my response was like,
Was your response
no,
intense?
I need to be, yes. Yeah. And I think, I love where we're like all over the place, but it's all making sense. I think it just brings us into this awareness that's like what's present sort of in the conversation and the industry now. And like, there's a lot of like, you have to be like this soft, open, and like, you have to let them lead, and all of these things that I think stamp out our fire and our intensity, which is in my perspective and from my experience in actual tantric polarity, is what they want. It's like they
Yes.
want our fire, they want our passion. And so how can we be like soft and like submissive in what reality is called, like, oh, I'm not going to say anything, I'm going to let you lead, I'm going to let you do everything, that's the way you attract a man. And then you get in a relationship and you wonder why there's no chemistry or fire, and can we just allow ourselves to be all of it, and take the shame
Yes.
away. Yeah. And like bringing
Yes.
it into a space where you're safe and consensual, it's like magic happens.
Yes. It makes me think, and this is kind of random, but I'm going to bring it back. People listening, this is just Rachel and I having a conversation, and you're here and
Yeah.
we're together. But like, in the books, have you read Stealing Fire?
Yes.
The book? Yes. You know how he talks about hedonistic calendaring? So he's talking about getting high essentially and like using psychedelics and stuff. And he's like, if you always use psychedelics and you're always expanded, then you're never expanded because you're actually plateauing. Whereas if you like don't use them often and then you occasionally use them, you actually get the nice leap, that like expansion point. And it's like, if we're in a fake version of softness and submission, like, oh, I'm just like really nice and lovely, then when you just lay there and submit and give it up, it's not a real true submission. It's like it's a dishonoring of self, which so many of us as women have been trained to do, versus like what Patrick has said to me. He's like, when you submit to me, it is such an honor because you don't submit to anyone.
Yeah.
So when you put it down and you put the Kali Ma swords down and you let me take you all the way, like it is the deepest privilege and honor because of the contrast.
Yes. I'm like, sorry, I'm turned on.
Never apologize for that.
Yeah.
What turns you on? Talk more about that.
Yeah. Well, I think this is so interesting because it is such a fascinating conversation, because I'm even feeling myself in this moment again, that picking up on the shame of both of those things. One, my fire, my intensity being too much in my dominant, in my power, that's not a turn on. And then also feeling the shame of like fully and completely surrendering and submitting and letting myself be taken, and like seeing that comes from from at least from my perspective, that there is a right or wrong way, which can kind of go into the gender roles, and like taking those off and just being like in the presence, in the creation, in the yin, in the yang. Like we get to be all of it. We get to feel all of it, experiencing Johan, like I think as well, like feeling me in my full power, and then being able to take me fully and me submit to that is like he gets to this rush of feeling, and then I get to experience that rush in him through me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so like, I love, it's interesting. I've been saying this recently of like, and this is full admission, this is out loud in public now. Like, I enjoy to be on top, and to be completely honest, it's not like one of my full preferences, and I will go there, and it's with the right time. It's wonderful. And the reason why is because it's me more in like this dominant role, and I don't enjoy it as much as I do being like, take me, like, and it's not that my energy of my domination isn't present in that submission and in that surrender. It is. It's just that I want my body to, like, I am like you, I'm driving, I'm fast, I'm like, 100 feet in front of everyone. And I'm like, oh, I want to be held down so that I can feel that power in one place versus it moving me.
Yeah, so powerful. And like the power of owning our preferences, like that's just okay.
Yes.
And like you said, there are moments which you are on top and it feels right, and you're not a no to it. It sounds like if that is the right thing in the moment. And it's also just okay to have no's and preferences. And I think that's so important. And it's interesting you brought up the thing about like feeling shame for the power and feeling shame for the helplessness. Cause it's like, I've also got that where I was like, underneath my power was a helpless, and is this helpless little girl who's so fucking sensitive and scared that she developed a protector this fierce. It's like the tree grows as tall as the roots go deep. It's like our power is as powerful as our helplessness is helpless. And to play with that in these spaces too is like, can I be the fucking blubbering mess that's begging and confused and rolling around and like, I need help and I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, and like, and to be fucked in that space, like there's so much power in bringing all of these parts of ourselves into the bedroom and into our erotic life. Why do you think eroticizing these things is so powerful? Like, why is it so healing to make it erotic?
I think when I think about the word eros and eroticism, to me, what that means, the first word that's like synonymous is totality. Right? It is full presence of what is in the moment. Right? And so what that also creates in me is presence. What that also creates in me is safety. What that also creates in me is like full awareness. Right? And so when all of those are present, I believe real healing can happen, because trauma usually happens when we're not aware, when we're not present. Like it feels like it's been done to us. There's no safety. It's like, oh my God, what's happening? So when we're
too much too soon being done to.
Boom. Exactly. And like to slow down, which I really believe is a massive part of eroticism, right? Even when you are going fast, the moment is slowed down in your presence and awareness of it. And that's when we get to notice these contractions, and with our tantric awareness, slow them down, unwind them, unravel them, discover what's there in the unraveling, and then alchemize it with the energy of sensuality and sexuality. It's like
it's the levity to the depth, and the depth to the levity. It's like it's I love that you said earlier, depth and levity. I'm like, I look for that too. It's like, and that's the beauty, I think, when we're in an erotic space with someone we trust so deeply, is like you can be laughing hysterically one moment and the next minute you're like fucking and it's super hot and erotic, and the next minute you're like crying, and it's all possible. Yeah. What would you say to someone who's like, whoa, listening to this and they're like, that sounds awesome, but whoa, like I don't even feel connected to my eroticism? Where do they start?
I've been playing with this this aspect of the Holy Trinity, which
Mm.
to me is body, breath, sound, right? The Holy Trinity of our
Yes.
connection of like humanness and spirit, and to use those three things and explore them in your body as your spirit, right?
Mm.
It really can be that simple, and we've seen it in all of the things that we have led and experienced, even in something like yoga. There's a reason why they're like, okay, deep breath, big sigh, ha, because it allows you to get comfortable in the moment so that you can receive what's actually there. And I think that
Mm.
when you're feeling anxiety, the thing that you're missing, right, is your breath and your sound, right? Get back into the body, move around, and that helps you get out of panic of what's happening in my mind, and get it into the body so that you can actually work it out, right, and unwind it and
Mm.
massage it through you. And so I think that that's sort of what I'm like moving towards. It's like, get into that, work that, pray with that, worship that part of you so that you can
Mm.
learn the language of your body is, because it is speaking
Mm.
to us. It's just that our mind has a tendency to get in the way. And when we use our breath and our sound and our body, the mind has a tendency to shut off so we can actually hear the ancient intelligence of our body.
Mm. Hell yes. Hallelujah. And it, like, I think what you're speaking to is so important. It's like, you know what you want and you have the desire, but
Mm,
actually so much of it is meeting everything that's in the way. And life
yeah,
does that, right? Like, I'm experiencing it right now. I had a massive expansion and I experienced so much recognition of these new yearnings and desires and what am I calling into my life. And then life brought me all the obstacles inside of me that will prevent me from being able to receive that which I say I want. And so,
yes,
like, what I'm hearing you talk about is like meeting the blockage, meeting the anxiety, meeting the discomfort, like with breath, with presence, with sound, so that you can actually be with and experience
yeah,
it, instead of like, when something's uncomfortable, we want to move away from it, understandably. But by disconnecting, we hold it to us because we haven't been able to process it fully. And now it's stuck in the body and stuck in the psyche, and we pathologize it and think this is just who I am, or I'm broken, or this is my
yeah,
personality, all these
yes,
fixed ideas, versus like, I yearn for this. I want this thing. If it's someone listening and they're like, I want that connection to my erotic self, it's like, okay, what is in the way of that? What are all the obstacles?
yeah,
And there's a beauty to that, to exploring that mess. It's fucking messy for sure. But I think that our soul came for that experience of digesting the karma and of dissolving the blocks and through relating to them and experiencing them, more than it came to experience the outcome that the human wants,
yeah, 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 yeah. It's yes, 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 a million times yes. And I think that luckily we're at this time now where this information is more readily available. And I think that number one thing to remember is like, it is scary. Like, don't let anyone tell you that it isn't. It is. It's scary. You're facing off against part of you that you have rejected and abandoned, and it will feel scary, and parts of it will be scary, and you are strong enough, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
really realizing, and I think like anything else, it's a muscle that we work, right? I've been talking
Mm-hmm.
about this recently. It's like we're sort of taught in our society to work the muscle of joy, of bliss, of happiness, of success, of fulfillment. And what about working the muscle of sadness, of grief, of shame, of anger, of rage, so that we get comfortable with those emotions, so we can then therefore learn from them? Because I really believe that
Yes.
emotions are here to teach us, right? But we're just like, if we're angry, exactly as you said, we just turn away. Or if it's uncomfortable, it's like, no. But what if we turned towards it and learned how to do it in the face of discomfort?
Yes. And then it's not an obstacle,
Yeah, it's
even
a
though it
it's a
might be
it's a
uncomfortable, it's
yeah, it's a like
it's
an
just a,
added, yeah.
it's just
It becomes
a
an
flavor
ally.
of frequency. Yeah, it's like, oh, there's a
Yeah,
signal, in the same way that joy is a
yeah,
signal, in the same way like any
yeah,
emotion becomes a signal. And like, we can know that on a theoretical level, but the only way that we actually embody that is through, exactly as you said, like, how do we flex the muscle? Like, I'm learning to flex the muscle of grief right now. And
yes,
I don't know if it ever stops. Like, we think, and I've been in this trap many times where I'm like, haven't I healed this? Or like, aren't I through this?
yes,
Or And and then it comes back around. I was saying to a client this morning, it's like our tree keeps growing taller. And I think it's Hiro Boga that says like spiritual evolution is not just an ascent, it's also a descent. And you know, our tree's growing taller, but our roots are going deeper. And so all of a sudden, as we're expanding, as I was describing, and like, wow, the roots are also going deeper to create a foundational infrastructure to hold that fucking tree up. Thank God. And then pop, you hit a pocket of something, you pop something, you excavate something that's so deep, so unconscious that at certain levels you didn't touch it. And then all of a sudden the roots finally are deep enough that like you pop a little pocket of anger or grief. And it's funny that you brought those emotions forward because, you know, from studying trauma, we know that grief and anger are usually the two emotions that we're most disconnected from based on our trauma. And I know you've talked a lot about reconnecting to your rage. And I'd love to hear more about that. And for me, I'm realizing it's about connecting to my grief, that the power in many ways covered up. It's like, whoa, that's a forbidden feeling. That's too much. And when we're little or when we have the traumatic experiences, often it is too much to touch the intensity. So it's actually adaptive for our survival to disconnect in a way. But then the process of reconnection, we all want to be alive. We all want to feel joy. We all want to feel expansion. That's a process of reconnection, but you don't get to select what you reconnect to. You reconnect. And it's fucking tantalizing and terrifying, I gotta tell you.
And that's back.
It, right? You were frozen this whole time, but I think you're being recorded fine.
You're like, but you know, we're in the. I think that's the recipe for life: terrifying and tantalizing, and letting. And normalizing both, right? Because it's, I said this morning, you know, like life, you can feel invincible, and a lot of the time we do. And then there's a moment where you choke on your water when you're drinking and you feel how vulnerable you are, right? And I think that all of it, it's scary. All of it is connected. And I feel specifically, I love that you brought up those two emotions. I think rage and grief are deeply, profoundly connected, because after we hit the anger and we really allow it to come, underneath that is deep, profound sadness of all of the parts of us that we rejected and denied and not let completely out, because we're afraid if I let go, then I'm vulnerable, then I'm susceptible to more damage and all of those things. And exactly as you said, we hold on to these childhood moments and we don't realize that we're not that child anymore, and that we can. And through that integration is how we actually, I believe, reach all the other emotions of limitlessness and infinite potential and bliss and ecstatic bliss, because we're not afraid of those other emotions. And we've worked the muscle so that our entire being is one muscle of, like, you know, limitless potential pumping into the universe, so that when things arise, because they will, because we're never done, because we're always going to be triggered, because we need to be moved by life to continuously expand, we're not upset by it, we're turned on by it. Right. And I
terrified and turned on.
Terrified and turned on. And I wrote about this today. You know, and speaking with you as well, it's like, I remember these moments of like deep, profound sadness where it makes me emotional just thinking about it, where I was so cracked open, and it's like this magnificent space of emptiness where my known identity is obliterated. And when I think about those moments, I think about them with such profound reverence of like, my God, was that the most beautiful, magnificent moment of surrendering to the divine, right? To a space that is beyond what we can even intellectualize or put to words. It is a spaciousness that is freedom in a way. And I think it comes through all of those emotions and letting go of the fear of that emotion and merging with it completely.
Yeah. And I think your willingness, right? Like you were willing to risk living outside of the known, outside of the patterns and the comfort that they provide. Yeah. And it's like, what I'm experiencing in myself is that I'm expanding my capacity to love, but as my heart and as that love tree grows, I'm touching all the things that have prevented me from receiving more love, which is the armor surrounding the grief. And it's like, we think we heal these things, but I'm like experiencing, and you know, I've been sharing pretty openly on Instagram, which holy fuck, like I felt I had a massive, which you've been supporting me through like a fucking beast. I don't know.
Yeah.
And like the level to which we're connected, like messaging me at the, you know, it'd be like 6 a.m. and you're like, hey, are you okay? And I'm like, actually, no, right now, help. And like the level of psychic connection is unbelievable. So fucking grateful for it. But it's like this massive expansion point, which actually reactivated a lot of trauma. And then what happens usually for us in those traumatic spaces is we disconnect. It's like we don't even have control over it. For me, what it feels like is it's like my inner protector just pulls the alarm, which is like the automatic shutdown button. And I don't know if anyone listening can relate. It might feel like disassociation, numbness, shutdown, just total disconnection. And I lose all access to my heart, my feeling. And there's good reason for that, right? Like that's a survival adaptation. And I'm like, ooh, I must be close to something deep, honey, if my whole system has just shut down in the face of it. And like through support, which I think is the important thing to highlight, like we don't do this alone. I'm not doing this alone. I couldn't fucking do this alone. Like we do this, we heal in community. It's like, then I get brave enough through your love, through Patrick's love, through the love and support of my therapist and mentor. Like I get courageous enough to slowly like just touch a little of that grief. And what I'm feeling the last few days is I'm swinging between, and I'm feeling much more connected now, but it's like I'm swinging between disconnection, total shutdown, and wailing, bawling my eyes out, not even knowing what I'm crying about, like just total grief. And it's like, oh, here's this terrified little girl that's been underneath all this power and all this disconnection and all these layers, so unconscious that we don't even know. And it's just like, this is what healing looks like. It's so fucking messy. And I'm so grateful for you, my love, because you are someone who also is very willing to expose online, in life, like when you're not projecting some image of like packaged up perfection. And I think personally, that's what makes you so magnetic and so trustable as a facilitator.
Thank you, my love. I mean, both of us. And like, you know, I'm so completely honored to support you through this time, because as you said, we cannot do this on our own. And I have been held by my people in those moments. And you were one of them whenever that was fucking 6 years ago. And, you know, Moon in that moment that I just spoke of, and Johan, and like, and I think what you said is that's so perfect that I want to point out is like, you know, going from complete shutdown to wailing. And I think that so many people can resonate with that. I can certainly resonate with that. And the judgment on that is what makes it scary. And can we bring in the ceremony and sacredness and holiness of that breakthrough? Because that space in between is cracking a shell that has been, or an armor that has been tightly bound. And that's what, and it's not going to be like this forever. It's going to be easier and easier and easier. And that's why it takes so much compassion and sacredness and holding this, and a levity of having someone who can hold you in that and be like, you're okay, my love. Like, and you're not scaring me, because that's the thing I think we think is like, oh, this is too much. And then that makes us shut down again. And then we're too afraid. But like in the wailing, like, let's celebrate that, because it is a breakthrough. It is us finally taking the lid off and letting that stream of like pressurized emotions have a place to go. And like, can we ceremonialize that and attract, you know, like people and mentors where we get to be held in that space, where we get to hold and be held, because that's really what's needed.
Yeah. And that's what we didn't get, that usually created the armor in the first place. So that's the corrective experience, exactly what you're describing. And it's like, I'm noticing in myself, I'm like, oh, wow, I'm able to, like the last time I had a massive trauma resurgence was probably about 6 years ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And even just like from then to now, witnessing like my ability to, it doesn't mean I can change it. I can't actually I can't force myself to open. I just am able to be more aware in watching what's happening. And what I'm recognizing is like, I just track, wow, I'm feeling a bubble burst of grief, and then I'm in the grief and I'm wailing and I'm like, oh my God, how long has this been in here? Like, thank God. And then I disconnect and I shut down. I'm like, okay. And what I'm trying to do is say to my body like, oh, thank you, body, for titrating me so perfectly. You swing me in, you give me what I can handle, and then you swing me out. I'm like, what a perfectly designed system, actually, like that we can trust the psychobiological wisdom of our body and our nervous system in a way if we get out the way, like you're saying. And just like, and I think for me, learning to get out the way, because clearly I've been in the way of this grief for a long ass time as a way to survive, and thank fucking God, because I made it, here I am. But like having people hold you so that you're like, that you feel safe enough to get out the way, even just for a little while, as you say, to let the stream flow out a little more. And then eventually, hopefully it's like, oh, well, now I actually have a relationship to the depth of that grief. I don't need to armor it, and it will come up sometimes, but I know how to make love to it.
Oh, woo! I mean, that I know how to make love to it because, and it reminds me, I'm thinking like the last time I had a really, really big trauma release was last summer, right before I went to Europe. And it was like, I mean, and I wrote about it again and it was, and now when I look back, it was so fucking beautiful and so profound. And I was like, I lost my fucking shit. And I could, and because I am practiced enough in this experience, I was also simultaneously witnessing myself. And I could at times express myself consciously through to Johan, through what I was experiencing. So I was simultaneously like in like, you know, can't speak, shaking, heaving in a full, and that's the beauty, right? It's like, it's not, I think that's so important that we both spoke to this to say like, the trauma is not necessarily going to look different. It's not like, oh, I've worked this enough. Okay. When I have a trauma response, I'm going to be really like polite and gentle in it. Like it might not look like that. It might just be, you have an awareness that what's happening isn't bad. It's actually great. And you get to make love to it, as you said, and you get to make love to the part of you that is so beautifully holding as you fall apart. Like what a beautiful gift that is to give yourself and to give the moment.
Yes. Ooh. Oh my gosh. And you know, like, and I'm curious if this happened for you, when we have those huge releases that are scary, they're scary for a reason because we've held them down for a reason, which is why they're so pressurized and intense when they come out because of the holding down. It's like the equal and opposing forces. It's like if we've held something down that hard or, you know, shut something down that hard, then it has to push that hard to emerge and erupt like a fucking volcano. And that eruption in the letting go, in the experiencing of the grief or the rage or the trauma or the terror or whatever it is, it's like with the right support, with the, you know, all of those things. I'm not saying anyone should just go out and force their catharsis. We, you know, I think these things just happen. We don't choose it, right? And in those moments, how do we support ourselves to stay present in the experience? Because it's like it's only healing if you're present. If you can't stay connected to the experience, it's not a healing experience. And so that's what I think you and I are describing is like an ability to maintain connection. And what I'm describing is that there are shut-off points, an automatic shut-off points. I'm maintaining connection and then actually my system is shutting off, and that's okay too. That's important. But what I'm learning through this is all these memories are resurfacing, all these patterns are being made clear because my level of awareness now, the inner infrastructure that I've developed through daily practice and daily devotion means that although exactly as you said, it's not pretty, I'm losing my fucking shit. It doesn't mean we're going to be all polite about it. But then in that, through maintaining connection for as long as I can come out and look at that and go, wow, I'm having realizations about patterns that I've had inside me my whole life, things that have prevented me from the deepest levels of love my whole life, things that have kept out deep intimacy my whole motherfucking life. And if I didn't have this tremendously difficult period that I've been walking through, I wouldn't get to see all that. And I'm curious, did you, through that release, did you see things maybe after or in time? Yeah.
Oh, I think for me is like, I had been, as you know, like, this is the tail end of my 5-year rupture experience. So I was practiced enough in it that I could could track it. And it was, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it was fucking phenomenal experience. Like I was like, wow. And I saw where I was just, yeah, the patterns where I was plugging in and making up all these stories and trapping myself because that part of me was absolutely petrified and terrified that it would happen again. And so I had created this as, you know, this massive like armor that was like immovable so that I would never have to experience it again. And that, as we know, doesn't actually work, right? We actually need to move out the kinks and massage and get that fluid and open so that we can see that, this is just me living out that pattern. That's not reality. And I think, to tag on to what you said, I think the thing that's so perfect to point out is like, when we are kids and we experience anger and rage and these emotions, like oftentimes they're not expressed responsibly by people around us, by ourselves, right? So we condemn them and think it's bad. And it's not that they're bad, it's just when they're irresponsibly expressed, they're not positive,
Yes.
right? And so we're learning how to responsibly express these things. So it's not like we're pointing this energy directly at a person or blaming or shaming, because that's just, as you're saying, like reinstating the trauma and re-injuring ourselves, versus just giving ourselves a sacred, holy, safe space to spew out the years and years of like condensed, chaotic energy. And it's okay. Let it be okay. Not judging it, not needing to look at it and fix it and heal it and solve it, but to let it reveal itself. And through spaciousness, like during that time, Johan just sat with me just like beautifully. And he wasn't, like, I will say, he wasn't in his emotions. He was stoic. He just held that presence, that deep, deep presence, and kept on saying, is there anything more? Is there anything more?
That's the phrase of not backing down or shrinking away. Not only am I here, give me more.
Yeah. And woo!
Yeah. You're like, boy, was there more.
Yeah, boy was there more.
Yeah, my God. It's like exactly that thing with anger or grief or any heavily charged emotion. Can we experience it without acting it in or acting it out? Can we just experience it as energy and sensation in the body? And who was modeling that for us as little ones? Not really many. Many of us did not have that modeled, because it's hard to just stay with the experience. I don't need to act this in by blaming myself, shaming myself, collapsing in. And I don't need to act this out by projecting outward, blaming or shaming externally. I'm just going to feel it as energy and sensation in the body. And I know that's fucking hard. It feels like, I know I'm in it right now, that it's like, it's going to rip you open. And there's these vows inside, like you were talking about, like how when we're kids, you know, we have an experience and we don't want to experience it again. So we armor up or we do whatever it is. And then that bubble bursts, that armor bursts, something challenges that. And it's like all those vows of, for me, it's like, never again will I depend on someone so that they can let me down. Never again will I XYZ, whatever it is, we all have them, those vows that then get questioned, and we have to actually relinquish the vow. It's like when we do prayers of like any vow in this lifetime or any other, like, may I release it? It's those fucking vows, those chains. And exactly what we've been talking about, actually it's moment to moment. It's not never again, because we will be hurt. We will be let down by the people we love, but we couldn't face that as kids, but we can face that now. And the emotions that we couldn't hold as kids, like we can hold now. And it's just, it's such a fucking fascinating, wild unlearning and relearning experience, y'all. Welcome to Earth School.
Yeah. It's so beautiful. It's so gorgeous. It's like, it's letting ourselves, you know, off the hook in a way, and just like being more compassionate. I think to what you just said is like really letting go of absolutes. Absolutes are fucking danger zone, because the only two things that are certain in this world are you will die and things will change. Nothing else is certain. So saying, you know, never and always, and like, I'm never going to, or you always, or all that thing, it's like, it puts us and everyone around us in a trap, right? We can't use finite language because it is moment to moment. And that gives us leeway to be able to change, because we are evolutionary beings. We are meant to evolve and expand. Consciousness is expansion. That's what it is meant to do. If we try to block it, that's when we fucking get this chaotic ball of energy that wants to run havoc on our system.
Yeah, and that finite language piece, like, it's so important, and I'm so grateful you've reflected to that to me in some of our conversations. You're like, my love, you're using finite language, and it's so helpful because you're like, fuck, you're right, I am. And that's when we know we're in that child consciousness, because the mind as kids can't hold complex, nuanced ideas. We have black and white, right or wrong, bad or good, because that's just how the child consciousness works. So it's like a really good point to notice when we're speaking that way, and to have the people we love reflect that to us, so that we can come back into self-agency and that like adult consciousness. So fucking grateful for the mirror that is you, my love, because you call me on my shit and I'm like, thank you.
Hey man, we're all calling each other on our shit all the time. That's what we need each other for. Like, because I did it today. Johan was like, always, really now. I'm like, oh yeah.
Feels like always, but it ain't always.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah. Well, my love, I feel like we could do this forever. And the good news is we probably will, but many lifetimes. But I want to do some improvised rapid fire before we close up. What's the fastest way to turn you on?
Oof, presence. Full fucking presence. Give me all your energy staring at me. Panties are off.
Dom or sub?
Sub.
What's the fastest way to turn you off?
No attention, like being distracted.
What's your favorite form of sensation play?
God, the first thing that comes to mind is like energy. I want to feel your energy in my energy.
Bless. Yeah. If you could be any animal, what animal would you be?
A leopard.
Yes, bitch. Most important thing for successful relationships?
Conscious communication, co-devotional communication.
Yes. Where can people find you? How can they connect with you?
Y'all can find me at Positive Pringle on the Instagrams. And you can find me at IamRachelPringle.com, y'all.
Yes. Run, don't walk, people. What you going to say?
I was just
what you going to say? Me little jig?
I'm like in my country accent, I'm jigging. I'm doing a little jig.
Doing a little jig, honey.
Yeah.
Well, I love you so fucking deeply, and I'm so grateful for you. Thank you for your time.
Oh my God, what a fabulous conversation. Like, bless the cosmic musing. I love you forever. May we do this for many lifetimes. And yeah, I love you. Thank you so much for having me.
That's it for today, Awakened One. And just a quick thank you from me. Thank you for gifting us with your most precious resource, your time and attention, so that we can make this world a more awakened place. And if we're not friends on Instagram yet, then we absolutely should be. So come on over and say hello at Angelika Alana, and I'll see you there and see you next week.